It's an honor to have you with us today to share your story and your accomplishments.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. I tell you the truth, even in the United Nations, because I remember when I went for the interview for the UN job, the interviewer said to me, why would you want to work for the United Nations? I said, wow, because this is where everything will happen as it ought to be. This is where my decisions will be respected, my views, I will be left alone to do my job, and people would understand that what is right is right. And the interviewers, the way they burst out laughing, wow. You know, because I came to the UN, I had to adjudicate on cases between management and staff members. And I found that, yes, there's also a lot of impunity, even at this level. You have managers who are just as bad as the people in government back home, or some of the people. Not everybody was bad anyway. You found you had managers and top management staff who didn't know the meaning of human rights in spite of everything that the UN preaches. Unfortunately, I say some of them, you know. So I found also that even at the UN, you step on some very big toes. And how do I put this? You know, when I first went to Nairobi, for instance, I had a colleague, Judge Nkemdilim, a very strong, a great judge, a great jurist, really.
And let me just stop you there for a minute so that our audience understands. You were working for the UN. You were handling disputes between employees and the UN, the management, but you were located in Nigeria. That's where your station was. Go ahead. I just wanted everyone to understand how you got to Nairobi.
Yes, the tribunal had 3 locations: New York, Geneva, and Nairobi. And I elected to go to Nairobi because I wanted to be closer to home. And I was very fortunate that we were the pioneers of the new internal justice system. I was very fortunate that I was working with Judge Nkemdilim. Judge Nkemdilim, there were 2 of us in Nairobi. Judge Nkemdilim is from Mauritius, and that man, you know, he's all courage, strong-willed, stood up for the truth, stood up for justice at all times, no matter whose ox was gored. That was Judge Nkemdilim. That was my person. And so together, I know that the truth is that all over the United Nations, at the time I was there with Judge Nkemdilim, and even afterwards, the Nairobi duty station, everybody knew, was not to be trifled with. The judges didn't want to know whose ox was gored. They will look at the evidence and give judgment according to law. And they didn't want to know who was the senior management, what, and what powers they wielded. And so, of course, they wielded a lot of power. But we had to speak truth to power. And Judge Nkemdilim was just my person. And of course, when Judge Nkemdilim left, I felt so empty. Then we had Judge Agnieszka Millard from Poland, who came. And yes, I think Nairobi has been very fortunate in the UNDT. You know, again, Judge Millard, she's still there now. And she's one person that has consistently stood up to management. And I tell you, standing up to management in the UN is not easy.
Mm-hmm.
UN is not utopia. I thought so when I was going there. It is not utopia.
And you were there on that court for 10 years, from 2009 to 19, right?
Yes, for 10 years, yes.
And were there any, in addition to, like you said, you stood up for the truth, did you have any run-ins with management at the UN?
Of course, there were some senior managers, you know, who, of course, you couldn't even share a good morning with them. You know, consistently, there were people who looked at you in that kind of way, like, oh, these judges are a problem. These judges are a pain in the neck. these judges, and I remember when we first started with this new internal justice system, somebody in top management in Nairobi went to our then registrar, Mr. Jean Pellet, and said to him, what is it with your judges? We're not going to tolerate this here. What do they think they are doing? They want to destroy everything we're doing, our management tools and so on and so forth. No, we're not going to accept this. But very quickly, they understood. They got to realize that they had to accept, our decisions. They got to realize that we were not going to look at their faces. We're not going to be guided by their, whatever they thought their position was. We didn't want to know. All we wanted to know was that everybody had a fair deal. Staff members were treated with respect, and that their rights were not breached, and that everybody was accountable, management and staff. And of course, where the staff members had committed misconduct and, done all the wrong things and the things they shouldn't do, we were quick to speak up that, no, this. But if it was about, I am this, I am that, I am an assistant secretary general, and I'm this, that, and the other. No. It was not for the tribunal. It was not for the tribunal. And they quickly learned that. And the Nairobi duty station particularly had that reputation. And of course, all our other duty stations too, everybody did their best. Everybody tried to do their best to, not to be taken over by management, and we paid the price too. As UN judges, there was hell to pay for some of the positions we took. But one of the, I must say that in spite of everything, some of the decisions we gave ultimately paved the way for amendment of legislation. I remember particularly there were a couple of matters I did, which were all identical. This was in the days, was it 2013, 2014, when the Ebola disease was, raging in Sierra Leone and Liberia, in those parts of the world. And everybody's hair was on, standing up like that, like this Ebola thing. So Liberia was very badly hit. And I remember the head of mission at that time, she was all over the news, CNN everywhere, addressing the UN Security Council on, the impact of Ebola on Liberia and how it had affected almost every county, and people were dropping dead and so on and so forth. About the same time, that was the news at that time. About the same time, these matters came before me. I think 4 staff members were placed on administrative leave without pay. And one of them, I remember, I think they said there was a sit-in strike or something like that. These were members of the staff associations or so, the local staff association in Liberia at the mission. And there was a strike or sit-in strike over some grievance with management. And they had blocked the gates and stuff like that. So some of them, the ringleaders were picked up and placed, investigations were going on, they were placed on administrative leave. Initially with pay for the first 3 months. Now, 3 months on, the UN, the top management came back and said, we haven't finished the investigation. We are extending the administrative leave. Now without pay for another 3 months. And then after the second 3 months, that's 6 months in all. We're extending again for another 3 months without pay. So when the matter came before me, I think in my ruling, I put it out there and I asked counsel appearing for the UN, how do you even, and when you take away the element of pay, for the first 3 months, you give them administrative leave without pay, understandable, with pay. While you did your investigations, why are the investigations not over? 6 months on, 9 months on, and you just keep extending and extending. And I told them that this was disciplinary action by stealth. Why don't you come out with your investigations? And then your head of mission has gone on and told the world what a terrible situation you have in Liberia. Now, these staff members, you have taken away the pay from them, sent them on administrative leave. That means their entitlement to, the usual health insurance is stopped. Every entitlement is stopped. There's no money to feed their family. The woman cannot buy milk for her child. And you tell us you are still investigating after more than 9 months. I said, no. What you are doing is you are punishing these people. That's what you're doing, and that's the truth. And I said, this is so wrong. The United Nations must not behave like this. In the midst of the Ebola outbreak, where people are dropping on the streets, your staff members that you've sent on administrative leave, you take away pay from them. They cannot feed their families. At the same time, if they are sick, they do not have access to proper health care, because you've also taken away their health insurance. That is not what the UN should be doing. The UN is a humanitarian organization and must be humanitarian too to its own staff members. That is the starting point. Charity begins at home, And of course, I reinstated the element of pay and all that. And I think the UN was rightly embarrassed. Interestingly and happily, in January 2017, a colleague of mine was telling me, there's this new legislation, administrative instruction in the UN. And I put it down here. It's ST/AI/2017/1. And section 11.2 of that legislation now provides that a decision to place a staff member on administrative leave without pay shall be without prejudice to the continuation of any education grant to which the staff member may be entitled, as well as without prejudice to the continuation of health, dental, and life insurance coverage. And, so these are some of the, shall I say, I don't know if I should say happy endings or, the
consequence. It was the consequence. It was the consequence of you standing up and making that ruling. The UN realized a change needed to be made.
So, and I must say my other colleagues too made decisions that affected legislation in the UN, that affected the way the UN did things. They had to go back. Of course, they won't tell us, but then going through pronouncements, we now realize that, they are able to take in and implement or act on what some of these our rulings and judgments.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So you made your mark at the UN. Again, a situation where you stood up and would not stand down. And one of the things that really I feel is that you have never let your Black robe get in the way of your humanity, of understanding the human condition, that you have not, to me, you are not someone who feels like they were anointed to be a judge. You were appointed.